All right. Well, if this is the Hangout, we chat version, I'm going to drink some coffee. So the question that was asked is why HR compliance? Like, why did I go from tax compliance to HR compliance? So a little bit of background context. Started a company back in 2009. 10 years later, sold it for about a $500 million to a publicly traded company. A lot of individual business owners or people that I talk to that want to grow their business and expand their business, what they tell me is that they would love to understand what I did that was really successful, or what I did that was magical, or what was the secret sauce, if you will, to growing a business from your basement or your home to nearly a $500 million business, right? In just under 10 years. Hard work is definitely at the top of that list. That is really a driving force behind getting things done. And when I say hard work, I mean just putting in the time and investing the time to get things done. But separate from hard work, which is what most people I think will say or are aware of, the thing that really kept us on track, and it was really very eye opening when I went to go sell my company, is truly, and I'm not saying this to remind you of all the times you've screwed this up, you're forgiven, but it's doing the right thing, and that wasn't something I always did. Like I screwed stuff up. I didn't pay attention to things that I should have paid attention to as a business owner, and those things will catch up with you. So when I went to sell my company, and the organization that was looking to buy went through and looked at all of our legal compliance, like where were we following the law, where were we not following the law, especially stuff like HR, human resources, which is really complicated because I was in tax compliance and I was not an HR expert. I think most people that worked in my company would agree with that. We were great at building culture. We were an award-winning organization. We had really happy people. A lot of that came down to great hiring and focusing on our people. But when it came to actually ticking and tying all the things that need to be done from an HR perspective, we weren't doing those things. And I know that because when I went to sell my company, there was a huge chunk of money, I mean, millions that were set aside and that we didn't receive because we weren't following these laws. And they had to kind of put it to the side and say, hey, in the event that you get sued or we have issues, we're not going to be responsible for that. So it was pretty eye-opening that not following the law will actually take money off the table when you go to sell your company. Not following the law is, I mean, in and of itself is bad. Like, I mean, if you're running a company, you don't really have the option of ignoring the law. If you want your company to survive and do well, you need to follow the law. Of course, then the very next logical question is, well, what do I need to do, right? Who do I talk to in order to understand what to do? And when I looked at that HR stuff that we weren't doing correctly, and I dug into it, much like I had done in the tax space previously, what I discovered was that there wasn't anyone that had created what we had created for tax. So in the tax area, my previous company was talked about as like the gold standard of accuracy and compliance. Like if you wanted to get tax right, you used us, right? And when I went to look into the HR space after having sold my company, I was just curious. I'm like, hey, who's doing this, right? A lot of great companies, big companies, ADP, Paychecks, they do payroll. There's a bunch of human resource information systems, software that you can put your people's names and information in and track all that. There's companies that have videos and stuff that you can do in order to present stuff to your people. I mean, there's a lot of cool pieces of software out there, but nobody had gone into this space and done what we had previously done for tax, which is you've got to go get the law. In order to follow the law, step one is you need to go get the law. Step two is you need to have a team of people who are able and willing to actually read all that information, sort it out and organize it, and then keep it up to date on a real-time basis, which was something that it took me nearly 7 years to figure out in my last company. Is like, how do you keep laws up to date on a real-time basis? And now we were focused on tax law at the time, but that same model in my mind in terms of like, hey, what do you do and how do you set this up, the processes, the people, the software? We did the same thing for HR law. So that's how we got started with HR Law Made Easy, is we went and kind of followed the same recipe. Like, hey, here are these laws that need to be obtained, and you need to go through them, and you need to read them, and you need to understand them, and then you need to let people know what they need to do, because people just don't know what they don't know. And that's what I experienced when I went to sell my companies. I had no idea that it was going to be a giant, punch to the gut in terms of a price reduction or amount that we received as we were closing and wrapping up the transaction. And none of this is negative of the company that acquired us. I mean, they were doing the right thing. They were protecting themselves. I mean, I get it. I totally get it that if I were in their shoes and I went to buy a company and I saw that they weren't following all these HR laws, I'd be a little concerned. You're going to buy this asset, you're going to buy the stuff, and now with it comes this risk, right? So these aren't things that are none of this negatively reflects on the company that acquired us. None of this negatively reflects on us as a company for having not known what to do, though ignorance is not a defense in the law. It was something we should have done, candidly. But I also get now that we've come to where we are today with HR Law Made Easy that there wasn't anything out there. It's not to make excuses, but there really wasn't any reasonably easy way to be compliant with the laws. You can hire a lawyer, you can hire a team of lawyers, and they're going to spend months doing their best to tick and tie the things that need to be done, but they didn't have these tools either. They didn't have HR Law Made Easy. They didn't have all the laws in one place where you could just simply go in, read and understand what needs to be done, and then check the box that you've done it, right? These checklists that we've created, which is really kind of a simpler way to approach things, is just, hey, what are all the things I need to do? I'm running my business in Georgia. I just picked up employees in South Carolina. I've got some folks in California. Like, what do I need to do? Because the folks in California have got very different things that we need to do with them than the folks that are in South Carolina or Georgia, for example. So here's the list. And okay, great. Well, then how do I do those things? And that's kind of the next step is we created these checklists to help companies know what to do, or to really empower companies to know what to do. Then beyond that, it's okay, great. Well, then how do I do those things? Like where's the employee handbook builder? Where's the library of policies that need to be written and drafted in a way that humans can read and understand? Because that was a big eye-opening, like holy crap moment where we found court cases where courts had ruled that even companies that had the policy had, because they'd written the policy in a very complicated way, and because there was no reasonable expectation that the employee can understand what was written, the court basically treated the company as though they never had the policy. And it was like, what? Yeah, that's the way that this is played out in court on more than one occasion. This isn't just some, one-off case. So we knew that we had to find a better, smarter way to bring policies to the table. We knew we needed to find a better way to bring the tools, the information. When I say tools, what I mean is a valid employee agreement, right? That's a tool to get compliant. I mean, I guess I could also say it's a document because it's in our document library, but it's a tool to get compliant, because without that individual document, I'm not able to follow the law, right? And that was a huge part of the development of the software, is that it's one thing to go get all the laws. I mean, that's great, but most people don't want to read laws. Even lawyers don't love reading law. I mean, I don't mind it, but it's not like the most fun activity, right? You don't wake up in the morning and be like, woohoo, I'm going to read a bunch of laws. So having read the laws and come up with a list of things that need to be done, then the very next step was to then identify, based on that list, what are all the tools or documents or things I would need to have in order to follow that list, right? If I've got a list of 17 documents that I need, well, somebody needs to write them, and ChatGPT isn't going to do it. I mean, it'll write something and it'll sound great, but it's not going to be legally compliant. So we went through the process of, and it was a long process of writing all this information, including steps or procedures that need to be in place, things that need to be done that you don't. It is shocking to me how many things are on the list that need to be done legally that almost nobody has any clue about. So you think you've got things covered by using one of these big companies, an ADP or Paychex or whoever it is, but they're in the business of doing payroll. They're not in the business of getting legally compliant with HR laws. And we ran into the same situation in my prior career where I was focusing on tax. There were some great companies. The company that bought our company was a great company. And they did what they did really well. And they kind of got into our area a bit, but they weren't focused on it because it wasn't like their core thing. Same with payroll companies. I mean, their HR compliance is something that I think that they really want to bring to the table, and they want to help companies with that. But the recipe that they're missing is they don't have all the laws. They haven't then created checklists that need to be followed by state and state, local, federal, whatever. And they don't have a team or a process to keep it up to date. It took us 7 years to develop that process at my last company. Um, and I'm just fortunate that I remember what we did and I know how to do that structurally. So we were able to bring that to this company much faster. We still had to go do all the things that you got to do in order to do that. Um, but maintaining laws on a real time basis, connecting them to the checklists so that the checklists are a living, actively kept up to date list of things to do is the kind of the foundation. It is really the foundation. I mean, our people are our foundation. Without our people, none of this would happen. But when you look at structurally to get compliant with HR laws or with any law, it's having a list of all the laws, make sure that that list is complete, being able to monitor and identify when new laws get created and grabbing those quickly, getting those reviewed, added to the checklist where it needs to be added to, or if it's not important. What I mean by that is that it's not something that you need to legally follow or there's any change that needs to be done to your business. It's just simply like, hey, here's a new law, and it maybe provides clarification or some other information that just supports an existing law. Having those buckets broken out like we do, and then being able to keep all that up to date real time is that foundation of getting HR compliance done right. It's anyway. So yeah, I didn't create HLM Made Easy because I lost money in my last company's sale. I discovered that this was an area that was very similar to tax, where companies have to do these things. They don't know what they don't know. And it will cost you big if you don't do it, whether it's lawsuits or whether it's some other financial burden that hits your organization. It could be a government comes in and audits you. It could be an employee quits because they know that you're not following the law and they don't respect that. That's a big cost to an organization. It could be that your employees increasingly don't trust you as an organization, which reduces their productivity and doesn't help you. Could be that there's a lawsuit and it harms your reputation, and now you're struggling to effectively obtain customers or make money. These are just all negative consequences, which it isn't really where my mind focuses as I design software or I work with the team. But it's a real outcome. I mean, these things do happen, and organizations don't like it. And I think really, as I talked about a while back, when you're in the process of building a company and you're say you're going from hundreds of thousands in revenue or money that you're making up into the millions. Once you break 1 million, once you break 5 million for sure, once your employee count goes from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, this is really when it's early on, really when you've got to make the time to focus on this stuff. It's no joke that, and these numbers, I believe, are from 2023. They may be from 2024, but they're recent numbers. These aren't numbers from like a decade ago. So it's about a 1 in 6 chance. So if you take a 6-sided die and you roll it, you've got about a 1 in 6 chance of getting sued in any given year by an employee. That chance goes up to about almost 70%. I think it's like 66, 65% if you stretch out time over 5 years. So worrying about lawsuits is not something I encourage somebody to do. It's not really where I like to focus, though I do talk a lot about it because it seems to be something that a lot of other people focus on. The fact is that lawsuits happen when companies don't follow the law. If you're following the law, you're behaving in a way that you're following the law, you're not likely to get successfully sued. You may have somebody file a lawsuit. You may have somebody go talk to an attorney. That attorney may reach out to your lawyer or reach out to you as a company. Then you hire a lawyer. But the conversation that happens between the lawyers is really straightforward. Either there's proof that your company did the thing, and in that case, you're kind of stuck, right? Or like most employee lawsuits, there's no proof. It's simply that the employee is upset, they're frustrated, something happened that they didn't like, They go to a lawyer. The lawyer then reaches out to your lawyer and they ask for information. And what they're looking for are mistakes, or if we kind of go back to what I was talking about earlier, the creation of those checklists that we've created, because those didn't exist prior to HR Law Made Easy, right? So what they're doing, and they don't have those checklists either, right? But what they do have is a list of things that companies commonly screw up and commonly miss or commonly don't do. So they're looking for things that you didn't do that you were legally supposed to do. You didn't have the right policies. You didn't update your handbook. You didn't do a training. You didn't put your notices and posters up, or you put them up, but they were behind like a refrigerator, right? They're looking for some mistake that you've made as an organization. And those mistakes that are made then get grabbed. They get put on a piece of paper or in an email or a live conversation with your attorney. And the conversation's pretty easy. Like, hey, here's all the things that your company isn't doing that it's supposed to legally do. How is that going to play out in court? Well, the employee said that they should have been paid more. This is a wage claim. What does that have to do with whether or not I've got an anti-discrimination policy that's up to date in my handbook? Nothing. But what it does do is it paints a picture that your company doesn't follow the law. And judges don't treat companies that break the law very well. They're not forgiving on these things. Like the moment you're in front of a judge, it's, did you follow the law? Yes or no? If you didn't follow the law, even if it's a law that is adjacent to the claim that's being brought. In other words, it's not that you broke a wage law, right? It's that you broke a different law, but it's in the same area. It's in the HR area. These are the things that get stacked up and presented to a judge as evidence that you're just a non-law abiding citizen. You are a lawbreaker. And it just doesn't play out well in court. And it's why your attorney then comes to you and says, hey, here's the deal. Chances of us winning are not great because we're not doing this, 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 and this. And the cost of going to court is going to be about $250,000, anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000. They're asking for $50,000. They're asking for $100,000. It's going to cost you less to just pay the settlement than it is for you to go to court. Now, that conversation only happens if there's something that the other attorney can point to that you were doing wrong. And I know this because I had, on more than one occasion later on, we fixed a bunch of things within our company. On more than one occasion, I had an employee or former employee go to an attorney and come to our lawyer and say, hey, we want to file a lawsuit, so forth, so on. And when we went through that process of handing that other attorney all of our stuff, we were following the law at that time. And as a result of that, nothing happened. They just went away. There was no money we spent. There was no lawsuit filed. There was no embarrassment. There was nothing. We didn't do the thing we were being accused of, which was important. But for us, from a protection perspective, we were following the law, right? And it was the same with tax. Like when I think back to like my tax career and the stuff that we did with companies, if we were audited or somebody came in and questioned, there was a customer comes in and questions like an invoice. As long as we were following the law, there weren't refunds to the customer. There weren't issues with governments. There weren't problems because we were doing the right thing. So really compliance, following the law, it's not really optional, truly. It's the law, right? And it's not something to beat yourself up for if you haven't paid attention to it, because most business owners don't. But it is one of those things that should be looked at and companies ought to be doing, not just because it's the right thing to do, though that is the reason to do it, because it's the right thing to do, but because it will protect your organization. And if you're trying to build an asset, you're trying to grow your organization, you're trying to sell your company, you're trying to expand, you're trying to attract the best people, nobody wants to work for a company that's breaking the law, truly. I mean, if the people you were interviewing knew that your organization didn't pay attention to and was through negligence breaking the law, would they be more attracted to your company or less attracted to your company? Less attracted to your company. So doing the right thing has many, many benefits. not just the benefit of doing the right thing, which is in and of itself its own benefit, being able to sleep well at night, knowing that you're doing the right thing, but it has benefits like being able to attract the best talent, retaining your people, avoiding lawsuits, avoiding humiliation, avoiding bad press, and the list goes on. And unless you've got a checklist, a list of all the things that you need to do to follow the law in the area of HR, unless you then also have all the tools and resources and information and documents to then follow that checklist, you're not actually able to comply with the law in any reasonable amount of time. Sure, you've got lawyers. You may think you've got it handled. This is not to say something that's unsettling. We have never worked with a company that was fully compliant. And we've worked with some big companies that have got big HR teams and lots of lawyers and lots of money. And it's because prior to HR Law Made Easy, there were not compliance checklists. No one had actually read every single law, created a complete list of all the things you need to do, and then created all the tools and resources and documents available to then follow the law. We have companies that have gotten really close. They're, if you look at like a percentage of compliance, they were in like the high 80s, right? 88% compliant, but they still were missing things because they just didn't know what they didn't know. And there wasn't previously checklists like we've created within HR Law Made Easy.